people who have experienced incredible amounts of historic and recent oppression are liberating themselves through hyper-local initiatives, and how they are fighting climate crisis, and how they're also fighting for their sovereign rights as Indigenous people, and using food as the vehicle for that change, and our relationship to food, and all of these things that have become hyper current and at the forefront of a lot of our thinking, especially after a year of a pandemic, when we're realizing that our relationship to land and our relationship to food and who has access to food and land is incredibly precarious, and that in order to move forward in a good way, we really need to re-examine our food systems and the fragility and the inherent inequity in our food systems. So that's what the film is looking at. And again, a cool thing about the intersection of my work is being a producer and a unit director on some of the locations, that I can also supervise music. And it was really great to be able to throw some of my music in there with my band PIQSIQ, but also really highlight other amazing Indigenous artists throughout the soundtrack as well. So that's the sort of overview of the work that I'm doing, and sort of at the core, the sort of reason, the ethos of what I'm trying to do in the world is to help people with paradigm shifts in how we look at accessibility, and how we look at, especially when we're talking about environmental issues, that the looking at green initiatives, looking at, things that get superimposed into historically marginalized communities are not a great fit, and can often be an extension of really colonial thinking and colonial problem solving. So what I feel is really important to keep present in a lot of these green initiatives and a lot of these, climate conversations, is that we also are highlighting and augmenting the work that marginalized folks are doing, and that we don't continue a cycle of oppression of people when we're also trying to look after the earth. So maybe I'll stop there. I think I'll save anything else for our conversation that Veronica is going to moderate. But yeah, that's sort of the gist of the work that I'm trying to do in the world. And as intersectional as creatively I try to be within various genres, I also try to have that mirrored in the work at the sort of the heart and the core, is how can we be as intersectional in our problem solving as well. And yeah, I think I'll stop there. So thank you, everyone, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was so insightful. Thank you so much for your words. Quique, would you like to introduce yourself and also share your intention for why you're here with us today?
Can you guys hear me okay? Hi, everyone. My name is Quique Escamilla, and I could start with just saying what my main line of work is, which is I'm a singer-songwriter and also a touring artist. And I think that the touring over the years has shown me and proved to me that definitely this kind of conversation, I mean, a lot of people are touring around the world, and we definitely can be part of the conversation and be, in a way, leaders in setting up examples or creating, helping the buzz about how we need to change our basically our ways that have not been working. And I think that anyway, so that's one of the things that I've been doing through music and through touring and all that. So I also do some work helping organize other the Music Association in Toronto, and trying to connect with other folks in the music industry that involves sharing the same ideals that can benefit initially our music community, musicians community, but also with the intention of actually spreading those seeds in a broader audience, in the public, or anyone in their community or in the country or nation or whatever. But that at the end of the day is a way to actually share my own ideals. I was born in a place that nature is, I mean, not more incredible than anywhere else in the world, but I'm just saying nature and the fauna and the flora are very, very present in the place where I grew up and where I was raised in Chiapas, Mexico, in southern Mexico. And then it's the tropical part where the rainforest intensifies and it goes all the way to the Amazon, right? So growing up there, I think that helped me see always since young age to have this connection to the land and to observe the nature always moving, you know, being alive. And obviously living in Toronto on the other side today, it's easy to lose, I can't speak for myself, it's easy to lose track of that natural world. And I think that for me to actually always consider that we could actually achieve a change as performers is ourselves, if we want to convey a message that can be positive for the big picture of the nature and the ecosystem of the entire world, we have to understand, we have to start by understanding and educating ourselves as much as we can. One of the options, or one of the things I've noticed in my personal experience, is being exposed to nature. Not so much today when I live in Toronto, but fortunately, it did have a major impact when I was a child growing up in the nature, you know, feeling nature, feeling their connection is our human connection, being part of that big ecosystem, just being another important part of the ecosystem as it is, you know, a plant or even a cloud, you know, the waters are earth. So, but I know some people, something basic that we all understand, but we don't seem to actually make the connection sometimes, and we forget and we get caught on the, you know, doing small things that might not seem so impactful to the earth, like, you know, not using a reusable cup. You might think people, oh, that's not really gonna change the whole world, but it, you know, it mounts up. And so I'm here to basically just honestly share my humble opinion, and I do appreciate having this kind of conversation. I include myself in the whole group of people that we need to continue inspiring each other to actually be able to convey through our music, through, I mean, our stories, and elevate a message in general to help. The pandemic has proven to us that we need to change things. We already knew that, but we were still going very, you know, relaxed about it, I want to say. And now it's proven that the entire world is connected better than any other opportunity to see it so clear that what affects on the other side of the world will affect me here in my neighborhood in Toronto. And what it will affect my sisters and brothers in Chiapas, Mexico, in the rivers or in the Amazon. So that's I'm happy to be here and contribute as little as I can to benefit this cause. So anyway, I think that's my intro for now.
Thank you so much, Quique. Thank you so much. And thank you for bringing those beautiful words to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Caroline, would you please also introduce yourself and state your intention for why you're here with us today?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Caroline Marie Brooks, and I love that you asked for our intentions because I find it quite grounding, especially in a conversation around climate justice and climate change, which is incredibly overwhelming and can be quite rooted in despair. So my intention is to approach this conversation with hope. So that's what I'd just like to put out. I'm a singer-songwriter from the Toronto area. I grew up just outside of Toronto and watched as housing developments ate all the farmland around my home. And that's where my young activism grew. That's where it grew out of. And I now live in the city of Toronto, and I'm mostly known for my work with a band called Good Lovelies. We're a trio of musicians from Southern Ontario, and we're so lucky we've toured around the world extensively with our band, and it's been our full-time job for about 15 years now. So I have incredible amounts of privilege in that this is my living, and I live where I live, and I just wanted to just give a huge expression of gratitude to that band that has given me this life. I on the other side, so outside of music, I'm really involved in Toronto in small not-for-profit work. So I'm involved with an organization I started with my partner called Secondhand Sunday, and this is a goods sharing program that happens twice a year. And the idea, we were just talking about leaving stuff outside of your house and people picking it up. So we started this program where people do it on the same days twice a year in the city of Toronto. It's just picking up steam. So the city is now on board in promoting that. And I sit on the City of Toronto's Circular Economy Working Group, which is a really interesting program that came out of the waste division in the city. And also recently have been a member of Music Declares Climate Emergency Canada, which is doing great work around this issue. I just thought maybe quickly I'd just give you a little snapshot of some of the work Good Lovelies has done around this conversation. So over the last decade, we've been thinking a lot about our impact on the environment, specifically related to the physical nature of the things that we make and the things that we consume. So it really started with a simple conversation around our rider and plastic water bottles. So about 10 years ago, we took all of it seems like such a small issue, but we took plastic water bottles off of our rider and we created a no waste rider. So this led to conversations with promoters around where they were getting the food for backstage. So no styrofoam, no plastic, trying to source food locally as much as possible. And then that also led to us working with an organization out of Guelph called the Wellington Water Watchers. So we started getting involved with water rights, which, as we all know, is a very big issue here in Canada. They have led the charge essentially against Nestle bottling water permits in Guelph. So we've partnered with them a lot, working to promote their organization and fundraising through our shows in that area. We recently, I would say about 5 years ago, really started having a lot of conversations around our footprint from a carbon perspective. Just for context, I have a family and one of my bandmates has a family, and we struggle a lot with touring and how long to be away. And that leads to a lot of conversations about how long we can be out and how far we can go. And I will sit here with great embarrassment and tell you 3 years ago, we did 1 year where we flew to Europe 3 times in 1 year because we didn't want to be away from our families for 2 months. So it was it can complicate the conversation. I just wanted to put that out there. That is something that we're talking about a lot. We started a campaign in 2019 around a Good Lovelies forest. And again, full disclosure, planting trees will not be the solution to get us out of the climate crisis, but it does create a conversation. And what we did that year is we decided for every album, download card, or a CD or record we sold, we were going to plant 2 trees on some land in Burkes Falls, Ontario, which is just north of Huntsville. And over that Christmas tour, we were able to sell enough items that we were able to plant 2,500 trees on this land, and that was planted in the spring of 2020. And I think that might have been the best thing that happened in 2020 to our band for sure. Yeah, and again, it led to a lot of conversations with our audience. And again, for context, our audience is very white. It's middle class, older people. They sort of lean towards 50 plus. And having conversations about climate with that group has been very meaningful to us. And has also led to us looking at this model going forward. We had a huge Good Lovelies forest tour that was canceled because of the pandemic. So we're looking to bring that back once we're able to tour again. And in the meantime, near that site in Burkes Falls, Ontario, we are looking to create a restoration festival. And what would happen is this coming fall, it's looking like it's gonna happen. We're gonna have people on site doing native tree and shrub plantings, doing ecological restoration to farmland that has been generally used for hay, which is a big water eater. So we're restoring some wetlands on this property. And so we'd have people attending this festival event during the day. And then you're probably hearing my family, which is they're all at home doing virtual school right now, so my apologies. And then at night we'd be having shows with artists who align with these sort of ideas. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that for now, but I just did also want to say I'm really cognizant of my privilege as a white woman in this space who has grown up on land I have a lot of settler privilege. So I do see a lot of my work through that lens, and I try to always be conscious of that. And I know through our work with Music Declares, it's a conversation that we have going regularly. So just really honored to be part of this space today.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And thank you so much for all that important work that you're doing and for using your privilege in this way. That's what those of us that have white privilege need to do, is use it. And any kind of privilege we hold, regardless of how we quantify it or clarify it, any of us that have privilege need to use for those that do not. That's absolutely right. And thank you so much for bringing that up. Okay, well, let's get on to now. This is so wonderful. Let's get on to some discussions that questions that we've created. So Tiffany, and all of the panelists, here's the question. So much of the cost of music making, touring, production is on musicians themselves, and making the decision to create sustainable merchandise and changing touring habits to benefit the environment can be cost prohibitive. How could the industry as a whole, in your opinion, how could they support musicians in making choices that have the environment in mind while allowing artists to make a living? Tiffany, can you give us your thoughts?
That's a super big and great question. I think it's multifaceted. I think it's complex and complicated. And I think that recognizing the complexity of solutions to mirror the diversity of answers is a really important thing to just bracket any of the initiatives that we come up with. And before I get into maybe answering part of that is, I think one of the reasons why we might be in, the sort of the crises that we find ourselves, not even just bracketing climate, but, justice, equity, whatever reconciliation means, environmental, like any of these things that I think that we're wrestling with and we're having a reckoning with right now is, I think part of the reasons these things happen is this sort of what I call the monocrop approach, where we have like one idea that's going to help solve everything. And like, I've seen festivals do this in different versions, like, all right, such and such a festival, we are proud to announce that we are a vegan festival, and that's what sustainability means. And that is the thing that is going to solve, our carbon footprint as a festival, or here's our ethical or moral standpoint that we happen to be making in this way. And those things really rub me the wrong way, because I feel like part of the simplistic approach of some of these solutions, that we're not actually being logical, and we're not being informed about what these certain choices mean and who's being alienated in this solution, who is being further marginalized within this very simplistic solution. And what is the cost of a tofu burger on the environment? What is the cost of, the human cost of imported X, Y, and Z? And where did those things come from? And is this, I feel like the surface impetus of it, the surface sort of desire to help solve a thing and to be very public and big about a solution, can sometimes be oversimplistic and actually not doing the work that it was intended to do. And I feel like if we can be thinking about these solutions that we come up with, that we dig a little bit deeper, and I equate it to the land acknowledgement, that this used to be an incredible intervention that shook people to their cores to actually think about the ground that their feet are, you know, occupying as uninvited guests to whatever, like when you went to go see a play at Stratford Festival or something, you know, that when, you know, this used to be an incredible intervention, but now it's not. Now we're doing these like very simple things, and that's what reconciliation means. I think there's a mirrored approach that needs to happen as we're looking at the environmental costs as well. You know, just saying, well, don't eat meat, you know, is a pretty simplified thing, or to say, oh, well, this festival is now a vegetarian or vegan festival, is a sort of, is not the intervention that we think it is, especially if we're doing the research to see what are the human and environmental costs of all of these choices. And if we're going to be a little bit more connected and tuned into the human cost of some of these things, then we're probably not going to be seeing them as the catch-all solution that we were hoping it to be. So I think that extends into like how you're making, who you're approaching to do your merch, and who is, you know, do you get merch done at all? Or, you know, I feel like there's that line of thinking that I think is missing from some of these approaches, because if we're just looking for that catch-all easy, you know, everybody gets painted with the same brush and that's the solution, then we're just going to keep reinforcing some of these gaps that we have. So I think that line of thinking, first of all, I think is really important to include into these deliberations, because once we do that, then the crappy thing is, then obviously things become more complicated and complex. But I think that part of the solution is recognizing the complexity and the regionality of some of these things, and that we need to be addressing them at hyper-specific, hyper-local, hyper-regional solutions. So maybe instead of it being like, oh, we're a vegan festival, what if we were like a 100-kilometer, 100-mile festival where we're only sourcing food from local farmers, or we've hired hunters and trappers in the area who are like, you know, providing food that was grown sustainably or harvested sustainably, and that we're not alienating, you know, or further marginalizing people within some of those movements. So, you know, it's kind of adjacent and around the question that you asked, but I think that level of inquiry into investigating how we're finding these sustainable solutions, and that what we previously thought was these catch-all simplistic things are really not. So how can we kind of redirect some of that energy into this line of inquiry where we are doing, you know, a different kind of impact, and not just these wash kind of catch-alls.
Absolutely, Tiffany. You know, it's so complicated. Thank you so much for all of that insight. And, you know, it reminds me, because, you know, of what you're saying and about how complicated it is, it reminds me of a teaching that my granny always used to share with me. And she always said that everyone has their own way. And so I just love that. That's what you reminded me of, is that there's so many ways to approach it, and we can't have a one-size-fits-all solution. And that's so important for us to keep at the forefront of this discussion and this conversation, and always protecting you know, marginalized communities, and to not continue to marginalize these communities, and but to support them through this whole process. Absolutely. Quique, can we get your thoughts on this question? I can repeat the question, or you can just join the conversation if you like. Which would you like, Quique? Oh, can't hear you.
Muting. There we go. I think I can just add. I mean, she covered a lot of the general vision, and I agree with a lot of what she said, or basically everything. But if we're looking for examples, to be more specific about, I was thinking about some examples that I could gather from my past experiences, and things that sometimes I understand that this has to be a collaboration between I cannot be thinking that I will find the solutions to actually have a major impact individually. I have to acknowledge that, you know, I can have the best intentions, but by myself, it's hard to convey this and activate people. I need the collaboration with the presenters. In this case, if we're speaking about touring, and that's something challenging. It's hard to find the one formula that can work with every. If you're speaking about an artist that can tour outside one country and then goes to another, and all of their frame or structure about how to be, you know, supportive to the ecosystem will fail if you go to another country where they don't care, you know, where they just, you know, they don't care what you might request, that is all green in your writer or something. I'm just saying that that's happened to me personally, where I'm like, you know, like Caroline saying, I don't I don't like bottles in my writer, and don't give me bottles. And then people will just literally give you 6 bottles on stage, and I'm not even going to touch them. But it's just, you know, it's those kind of things that people will. So I think that the challenge for me is how do you find sometimes the actual structure that you can keep, and even with your bandmates, I think that that's where it starts to keep at it and keep basically, you know, hustling with every presenter perhaps, or it's going to take a long time. But I think that the more artists connect in these ideas and these practices, the more we can achieve for also the other side of the collaboration, which are presenters, to actually join the conversation and make people participate, make the audience participate. And another thing for me is, I mean, raising aware raising awareness in different ways the artists can. It's impactful, you know. I saw my own experience working with um, the bicycle tour that we did a few years ago. We did a tour, all all pedal powered. Even carrying the PA was riding with us on the bicycles. And we did about a whole week of tour, every day a show, and every day we rode, you know, a certain amount of kilometers, maybe 60, sometimes 100 kilometers to get to the next spot with the bikes mounted. And my point is, I mean, it was a beautiful concept, but I could see how kids were involved in this, and in a joyful way. And in a joyful way, I believe that we were able to plant seeds in many kids' minds about the importance of, because hearing them come to me and say, before I play, we would have the bicycles on the side, you know, the mounted bikes where people or kids or anyone in the audience could join, get up on the bike and pedal power, and the music would happen. So I tried to make my point to the kids, say, you know, pedal for a bit, and then they were like, oh yeah, yeah. And then I would say, now stop, and I would just play, 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 and then the music would die. So they could really see, and their eyes would like, oh my God, it's up to me to pedal power, and my force is creating the power and making the show happen. Those kind of creative things. I didn't come up with the idea. I was just part of the whole thing once they got rolling, the project and the tour. But I remember that it was so impactful in among the kids, and those are the ones who sometimes I'd say that they're the most, you know, important in the whole picture. Not to say that the older community shouldn't matter, but I'm saying that the more, you know, the newer their minds are and wanting to pick up new ideas, the more ideas they're going to come up with, because they started to think, even right there, they would say, what if I do this for my house? How can I do this for my own place? What if I want to power my own fridge, my own video games? I'm like, yeah, you can. So you could see right away impact on the ground by applying those creative ways. So I believe that we can probably all, little by little, spend time and definitely get to the point, whether it is through collaborations with the festivals. I would love the day when festivals all say plastic bags are banned from all vendors, or anything that is plastic related, single use, done. And but it's not up to me to say what they should do. But I think that I can be part of the conversation at least. So I'm not sure if that's what we want to hear. But I had a few other things that I could mention. You know, that I've noticed that in the touring that I've done. I could mention a few things that could come to mind, like hotel rooms, for example. We go to conferences. Let's say if you're going to the conferences and bringing all this amount of like, disposable publicity or, promotional stuff that you're using. I think that today with the technology that we have, that should be out of the question if we want to use promotionals on paper or posters. I think that everybody's using a phone today, so everybody could just use different ways to share the information. Another thing that I always consider, it might sound a little minimal, but if we all did it, I mean, a lot of tourists around the world, they go every day for, I don't know, a whole month touring and going to hotels and in and out. And sometimes, the whole simple use of the stuff that they leave in the hotel, to me, that's something that I always try to remind at least my bandmates, say, hey, if you don't really need in your room or whoever is sharing the room, you don't need to reuse all that stuff. Don't even touch it. Like, because it's just, another waste, another extra waste, even a towel sometimes. I mean, people will come and offer, can we change towels at the hotel? And I'm like, why do you need to change it? I just use it myself. It's just for myself. So I try to avoid little minimal things, but if you really spend time doing that over and over and over and over for 10 or 15 years or however long your career is, it's going to mount up. Like, the use of stuff that doesn't need to be reused so quickly. And my rule is I always block the access to the room. I say thank you. I don't need what do they call it, housekeeping and all that. And I'll just say, thank you. I won't need it until I leave, because it might be only 2-3 days, maybe, depending on and that just saves towels that don't need to be reused or refilled and stuff, and cups. I don't even touch that kind of stuff that they leave on the desk. So if I counted enough times I've gone to hotels, it's garbage, and it's more more of that little minimal consumption that actually it affects in the big picture. So I'm not. Anyway, I would like to to pass on the words to someone else, but.
Thank you, Quique. Absolutely. Every little bit helps. And I loved your story about the getting the audience involved and the kids, and just that light going off in their mind about how fun sustainable energy can really be, and how we can all be a part of it. Absolutely. So now we're going to just pass it on to Caroline. Please give us your thoughts on this question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to respond a bit to a couple of things. I totally agree with Tiffany on the complexity of issues, and that sometimes in focusing on one solution, we can't realize that we're actually creating another issue. Case in point, NFTs that are currently coming out. It's becoming very obvious that NFTs are creating a huge amount of carbon, where we thought, oh, we're not physically creating material for sale. This is a wonderful thing. But in purchasing those items online, like, we're creating a huge carbon issue. And also, Quique, I loved your comment about like using our influence with promoters, right? So we have direct contact with promoters, and I just wanted to share a quick story, which isn't technically environment related, but I toured for many years with my babies. So I started touring with my first child when she was 9 weeks old. I brought her on the road, and our rider changed significantly that year. So we no longer had bottles of wine on the rider, but I had a pack and play on the rider. And I thought, there were some promoters who were just like, got it, no problem, you need a babysitter, I'm there for you. We're just swapping out the wine for milk, it's all good. And then in some cases we had promoters saying, like, I'm not doing this for you. This is your responsibility. And so it took a lot of patience and energy for me to say, for me to do my job here, I need you to respect my boundaries. And my boundaries are, I need a pack and play, and I don't want plastic water bottles backstage, among other things. But anyways, I just wanted to share that story in communicating with promoters, who are in general our allies, but sometimes it can be a little challenging. But on the question of this downloading of costs, like, I feel as a musician, I'm currently making a solo record, and it's becoming so evident to me how much of the cost of music making and production I'm taking on, and the return we'll see what it looks like, but it doesn't always equal out. So I know with Good Lovelies, we've chosen to always create merchandise that is as sustainably sourced as possible and ethically made, like around garments in particular. We look at ethical creation of t-shirts or hats or whatever, and it costs us more, and there's only so much of that cost that we can put to for the people who are buying that item. So I was thinking recently about our funding platforms in Canada. We have some pretty great funding agencies for art, and they'll fund things like flights or hotel rooms. But I wondered if there would be an opportunity for someone like Factor or Canada Council to come out with a sort of, I hate using this word because I feel like greenwashing is a thing, but like a green granting program that would allow artists to get a subsidy for materials that they're creating to offset those costs, right? So if you're going to sell a t-shirt and you're a band that's just starting out, and for you to make that t-shirt, it costs you $10, but you can only sell it for 20. Wouldn't it be great if Factor or some kind of funding agency could give you sort of a subsidy so you can take home some more of that money and make some more music? So anyways, I just thought that might be a cool, very tangible way that we could support particularly emerging artists who want to create sustainable merch.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a question that's been on all of our minds. How do we go forward with merch?
Yeah.
And also we do have to be mindful that not everybody has a cell phone, not everybody has a computer too. So again, it's a thing about accessibility and being able to get out to everyone. So thank you so much for all your comments. We're going to go into some breakout rooms. Everyone's going to be assigned, I think, just randomly by our tech Joel. And so let's continue this discussion. Also, let's please also discuss, have a discussion around accessibility and how that is connected with green choices. And part of our work that we need to do is making sure environmental choices don't have harmful impacts on vulnerable communities, as Tiffany was saying earlier. So and Joel, if you could assign us all to breakout rooms. Thanks so much. We'll see you back here in a little bit.
Hey Scott, what are you cooking there? Can you make some lunch for us here?
Making coffee. I'll make enough for everyone.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, Quique.
I think the last time I saw you, Scott, we were burning fossil fuels in Australia.
Indeed.
So are these rooms like happening automatically, or are we just in them now, or I think we're all still.
Normally a little note will come up and say that Joel has asked you to join this room or whatever, and you accept it, but I haven't seen anything yet.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. You're hired, man.
Quique, you mentioned the bicycle tour. I've been talking to James and James.
Yeah.
Because I went to school at James Davis, so I've known him forever. But Bridget wanted to do a kind of bicycle tour in September to promote Climate Live. So we're applying to Factor for that grant money. So she can promote Music Declares and Climate Live and tour in a sustainable way. So I've been talking to James and James about partnering on it. And they mentioned, I was like, who was on that tour again? The only two people I could remember were you and Abigail.
Oh, hello. Sorry, I'm checking my microphone. Can anyone hear me? Oh, you can. I can't hear you.
Oh,
I'm looking.
yes. Yes, we
Oh,
can
now
hear
I
you.
can hear you.
Most of us are muted.
The lovely deep voice you have.
Oh, thank you. And video. I think I lost the audio after they said small groups are breaking out, so I'm not sure what we're doing here, but nice to meet you all.
I think we're just back in the main room now. Hi, everyone.
Hello,
Hi, Candace.
Caroline.
Hi,
Nice to
Candace.
see you. I answer to Tanis and Tanis.
Candace.
Ta-da.
Hey, hey.
Welcome back, everyone. So that was a very quick but lovely discussion. I'm going to just share a little bit about what was discussed in my room, and if the other panelists could also share a little bit of what was discussed in their room. Just a quick, the main message in my room was just we all want to do something. We're not quite sure what that is. We don't have the answers. We want to be educated. We want to learn. And especially when it comes to touring and specifically about how to become a sustainable artist. Tiffany, can you please let us know what you spoke about in your group?
That flew by. It was super interesting. We were talking a bit about, how do we offset these carbon and costs as touring musicians, and then we shifted the conversation a little bit into where does the responsibility lie, and does it rely on the individual? And the sad reality is that us as individuals, sure, we can do all of these everyday things, which are important because they do make a difference, and we can ask for these riders, we can ask for these, things surrounded with our art to be more sustainable. But, I don't want to downplay the effect, but I also don't want to like amplify an unrealistic expectation of the change that might do. As a conversation starter, it is important, but I feel like where our power lies as people with literal amplification to our voices is how can we collectivize and activate as a large number of people to leverage awareness against who really are what really is causing the huge amount of harm. And I can't remember what the statistic is, but there are 7 billionaires in the world who are responsible, them and their industries are responsible for up to 70% of the emissions in the world. And so yeah, sure, I can use my reusable water bottle, and I can get an electric car or whatever, but at the same time, I am no match for a billionaire who is responsible for 70% of the emissions in the world. So where I think our focus should go is, yes, on an individual level, of course, do everything that you can, but also where we can be leveraging and activating population for awareness to say, okay, here's where the focus should shift. Like, yes, this is where we can have the biggest impact, is like these 10 people who are responsible for atrocities to the environment, and how can we be doing multi-leveled approach of personal, inter-community, international, but then also aiming our focus at eating the rich.
Oh my goodness, I could listen to you forever, Tiffany. I love the way you think. I love how you just get right to the core of what we need to be talking about. And so thank you so much for sharing. And then adding in a little humor, which again, as resilient people who come from resilient.
Not even joking, just kidding.
I don't think she's joking, and I mean, I'm not joking either. Like, we could have an Eat the Rich panel if we want.
That's the other breakout room, the dark web room. That was also it.
Thank you, Caroline. Can you take it away? Please let us know what you talked about.
We had a very small breakout room, and we actually just, I just asked each of the people who were in our room just to talk about what they were interested in. And so I learned Deandra's from Phoenix, Arizona, and she's a presenter, and she's done this really amazing initiative within their venue to strike all non-reusable items from their rider. So it's great system-wide change, very specific, very important. And we also talked to Mark, not sure if he's still here, and he's a jazz musician in Edmonton, and he's thinking a lot about, as he goes back to normal life, do we want to continue to fly around the world like the way we do? Is our, why is it in Canada, if you're showcasing at, there's a specific showcase in Europe that you can only get funding to go there if you only are playing that showcase, as long as you are not touring at the same time, which is ludicrous. Like, why wouldn't we encourage people to work while they were there and they're burning fossil fuels to get there? So yeah, we talked a little bit about that and making sure that accessibility is part of the conversation. I think that's really important, even if you're looking at this big shift that we've made to virtual online shows. In some ways, it's more accessible to some people. It is really not accessible to a lot of people, especially in communities where internet is very scarce. And yeah, just talking about like all those layers of consumption, whether it's through virtual media, and all the power it takes for us even to have this Zoom meeting today, like looking at these things and trying to weigh them. And like Tiffany says, I think it's really important for us to talk about those things, not to let them overwhelm us individually, because we will be headed towards despair if we live like that. But to activate is such a good word. One of the things I like about Music Declares an Emergency Canada, which is the organization that is co-hosting this event, is we're looking at lobbying the government for changes to the way we operate. And I think those kind of high level changes are going to make a big impact. And I think the music industry has a voice and can help make that change.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Quique, would you like to share what you spoke about in your breakout room?
We went ahead and started talking about how to actually do a bicycle tour. And we were speaking about basically the feasibility of this, sharing a little bit of my experience, and maybe speaking with some other organizations in Toronto that could possibly be, collaborators and supporters of this idea of a Toronto artist doing this tour. I think, was it in September? Supposed to happen in September? Kim?
Yes, we're applying for funding for September, beginning of October. Yeah. So maybe in-person concerts will happen.
Yeah. Yes, possible. If it's outdoors, I believe it will be possible. Anyways, you and I can. I'm happy to discuss this further if I can share any more insight or anything else or connections. Basically, that's all we kind of like had time to talk about. We could talk more if we could. And I agree with. I love that both Carolyn and Tiffany used the word activate. It's something that I always. I love it's one of my favorite words, because I'm always thinking that we need to do that as artists that have sometimes a microphone, and a lot of times we have it. And I think that we have to use our, find the creative ways to actually activate people. Not saying that, oh, they're dumb or something. I need to recognize that even myself at some point I have not been activated in my life. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, I have a chance to be an active cell of the whole organism, not just to live, passively, and more like, hey, let's go and make this action contagious. And I think that's a very positive way to see it, as Tiffany described it. I agree with a lot of that. And also thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Quique. I love that you said, let's make it contagious, this need to create change, to activate, and to create the change that we need to see in the world, that we have to see in each of our actions. And so I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for sharing all your time, and for sharing your knowledge, and for sharing the projects that you're working on. And I appreciate you so much. Liv, would you like to say any last words from Folk Music Ontario or Music Declares?
Thanks so much, Veronica, and thank you to all of the speakers today. It was such an amazing experience to hear from you all and to have everybody in this space together.